Brokaw called them the greatest generation. In the twilight of their lives, the Americans who won World War II are being grandly honored in books and in movies like Saving Private Ryan and the upcoming epic Pearl Harbor. But something much more personal is happening. Something as extraordinary as it is touching that recently united a village in France and healed a family in New Jersey. A forgotten hero now remembered. April 22nd, 2001. The entire population of a tiny farming village in northern France has gathered to honor a young American they'd never met. A young American who died before most of them were born. June 6, 1944. D-Day. The most massive invasion in history. Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy to liberate France from Hitler's army. 21-year-old fighter pilot Donald Markle of Dunellen, New Jersey, was in the thick of it, attacking the Germans with his P-51 Mustang. On June 10, 1944, Lieutenant Markle was hit during a strafing mission. His P-51 crashed just between those trees over there on the outskirts of La Besliere. Monsieur Duval found the body.
I saw the body there by the hedges, so we picked them up and took him to the farm.
The villagers of La Besliere got permission from the German occupiers to bury Lieutenant Markle here in their little cemetery. They knew nothing about him, except that he was their American, their liberator, who had come to free them from the oppression of Nazi occupation. They didn't know that he'd been a popular student at Donellen High School, class of 1940. A lead actor and champion tennis player who had gone to war at the age of 18 after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. This is where Lieutenant Donald Markle's wartime journey finally ended. The American Cemetery in St. James, France, 3,500 miles from his hometown of Dunellen, New Jersey. More than half a century ago, he was brought here for final burial, and he lies here today, along with 4,409 other young Americans who died liberating France. Like the war itself, Donald Markle had become a fading memory to the generation that followed, his medals hidden away in a trunk, until the village where he died decided to erect a monument to their American. With the help of a D-Day veteran and a retired American Air Force officer and his French wife who lived nearby, the villagers of La Besliere found Lieutenant Markle's family and invited them to the ceremony. His nephew, Donald Markle Chamberlain, born a year and a day after Lieutenant Markle died, carried the American flag. His niece, Margot Haldeman, unveiled the monument in the village cemetery. And with another niece, Lynn Gardner, placed flowers at its base. The Dunellen High School class of 1940 took up a collection for a bouquet. A cousin and boyhood playmate was so moved he could hardly speak.
Well, I think how the people in Normandy appreciate.
If we hadn't seen the Americans, we probably wouldn't be French today.
So these free French villagers reached across half a century, across an ocean, and touched the family of an American who had touched them.
The most touching moment was the man that buried him when he handed me this and said this was in his pocket and he had kept it since 1944.
I take it you, in a sense, feel you've touched him now.
Oh, yes. It was so moving.
It was very touching.
It's a closure. Because we never knew where he was before. I mean, we knew he went down in France. We didn't know where or anything. But now we know. And I feel much better.
So why, after all these years, did the villagers of La Besliere decide to honor Donald Markle? Well, that in itself is a remarkable story. It's part of a monument project to erect small monuments to fallen Americans in villages throughout Europe. A movement inspired by one man, a D-Day veteran on one final mission, and you'll meet him tomorrow night when this special report continues. The greatest generation is dying. Of the 16 million Americans who fought in World War II, fewer than 6 million are still alive, and that number is dropping rapidly. Old age and infirmity are claiming more than 1,000 veterans a day. As the nation debates a memorial to their sacrifice, some of the forgotten heroes are already being remembered thanks to one World War II veteran on one final mission to do something for three buddies he couldn't help long, long ago.
For 50-something years, that's always bothered me. You know, could I have done something?
Howard Swanger survived 328 days of hard fighting across Europe with the 2nd Armored Division. But one battle in particular haunts him to this day. He spotted a German gun emplacement moments before it fired, killing 3 of his friends in a scout car.
It went right through the driver's hatch, decapitated the driver, killed a lieutenant and the gunner.
It was a bloody postscript to the D-Day invasion, when the Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy to drive the German army out of France. Losses were horrific that first day, especially at Omaha Beach. U.S. forces were caught in a lethal crossfire from German guns on the bluffs. 2,000 men were killed on Omaha Beach in the opening hours of the invasion, never even making it off the sand. 57 years later, Omaha Beach is deceptively peaceful. Tides and time have washed away all evidence of the carnage of D-Day, until you look in the other direction. This is the American Cemetery at Omaha Beach, the final resting place for 9,387 young Americans who died liberating France.
It was a massacre. It was awful.
It was their sacrifice that Howard Swanger could never stop thinking about. Finally, diagnosed with prostate cancer and facing his own mortality, Swanger decided to do something. He went back to France, looking for the place where those 3 friends had been killed, and found it.
It was the exact spot where I thought it was. That was it.
To his astonishment, Swanger found parts of the scout car hit by that German shell more than half a century ago.
They scraped all the other parts that were off of it over into the ditch and covered them up. Well, they were still there. I got 19 pieces down there.
He asked the mayor of Saint-Georges-de-Rouy to build a memorial to his friends. And on the 30th of August last year, it was dedicated. The entire village turned out to honor 3 American GIs. Sergeant Adam Robichaud from Louisiana, Lieutenant William Chapnoy from White Plains, New York, and Private James Shelton from West Virginia. They even found a restored scout car for the occasion. Mission accomplished, Swanger returned to Florida, but began to think about other forgotten GIs who deserved memorials.
One guy here, one soldier here, one friend here. Just for him to put the name up. That's all I asked.
Spearheading the effort here in France is a retired American major and his French wife, who live here in the little Normandy village of Saint-Denis-le-Gast.
My gosh, if the American didn't show up, you know where the French would be now today? Under the German boots.
Terry Dungy knows about German boots. She spent the war in a Nazi labor camp for refusing to cooperate with the German occupiers. Beaten, starved, and subjected to the worst kind of brutality. Tell me about your experience during the war.
No, I'm not going to talk about that. I don't want to remember anything.
Terry Dungy prefers remembering the Americans who died fighting her captors. She and her husband Ken have devoted themselves to Howard Swanger's monument project. Because of them, Jesse Montjoy's name is engraved in La Haye-Penel, the village where he died far from his home in Kentucky. And Pennsylvanian Harry S. Katoski has a monument in Saint-Piance. And Carl C. Hilton of Oklahoma is remembered by the village of Lelou. And just last month, the village of La Belliere dedicated a memorial to Lieutenant Donald Markle of Dunellen, New Jersey, whose P-51 fighter plane crashed here on the 4th day of the invasion, June 10, 1944. Terry Dungy and her husband Ken were there, as they have been for every dedication. Ken's still sharp in his old Air Force uniform.
One thing when we welcome people back home, they can know that they haven't forgotten the sacrifices our men made.
I thought, the people before that, they didn't know who it was. And the people who lost, their sons and daughters, they didn't know where they were killed. They didn't know nothing about it. Now they know.
Howard Swanger's personal health battle is not going so well. His prostate cancer has spread to his bones. But that hasn't dampened his spirit or his enthusiasm for his monument project. He has 6 more dedications in the pipeline.